Welcome back, everyone. Eli Weber, together with Rabbanit, Rachel, Weber, Leshaw. That's how we do it. Let's talk about the core of Maggid, the main part of Maggid, which is obviously Maschil Bignos U'Musayim B'Shvach. So the Mishnah says, Maschil Bignos U'Musayim B'Shvach, V'doresh me'arami oved avi ad sof kol ha'parsha, which we don't do, right? We stop a pasuk before the end of the parsha. But even before you get there, the Gemara then has a discussion. What's the gnus and what's the shavach? And everybody knows it's a machlok. I think there are different girsos. I think Rav and Shmuel and Gemara, right? Rav says, avodim hayinu, right? We were over the avodah zarah. And Shmuel says, no, the point is...
said, avodim hayinu, or over the avodah zarah.
I'm sorry. Mitchila of the avodah zarah, hayu avosenu, that's avodah zarah. The second one is no avodim hayinu, we were slaves, right? All kind of discussions. The Avudraham says it's a real machlokes, which is problematic for us because we do both. It means we don't paskin. Most Rishonim say it's not really machlokes. It's the question of what the emphasis is at your Seder, right? Two possibilities. Either the emphasis is chronologically, first we were over the avodah zarah, then we were avodim hayinu b'farav b'mitzrayim. The second possibility is no, spirituality versus physicality. First, we were spiritual slaves. That's avodah zarah. Then we graduated to being, physical slaves. The problem with all that is, but that's not what the Gemara says. The Mishnah says, "Doresh me'arami oved avi." And so Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank in the Melamed Lahoel has an unbelievable idea. He says as follows. He says, it's true. Originally, we did exactly what the Mishnah said. And I'll read you the psukim. Va'anisa va'amarta lifnei Hashem elokecha arami oved avi vayered mitzrayim vayago shem imsei ma'at vahi sham legoy gadol atzum barav vayarei osar mitzrim right vayishma Hashem et kolenu vayotzienu Hashem mitzrayim biyad chazaka v'yisranu tuyov mora gadol v'ototu v'movtim. That's where we stopped. Says Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank, but we didn't used to stop there. We used to say vayivienu al hamakom hazeh. Now we're in Eretz Yisrael. During the time of the Mishnah, that was true. In the time of the Gemara, that wasn't true. And so the idea that your whole point of the Seder is now we're living in Eretz Yisrael didn't apply. And maybe it was offensive, maybe it was sad for people. So he said we stopped saying that, and the focus turned to Avadim Hayinu versus, and then God took us out of Mitzrayim, or we used to be over the Avodah Zarah. Which leads me to the question of, we live in Israel now. Should we add the last pasuk?
It's such a good question because I think what we're getting at is actually sort of these three pieces of what real Geula looks like, right? One part of real Geula is we are Ovdei Hashem. One part of real Geula is we are physically free. And a third part is that we get to do both of those two things in Eretz Yisrael. And the question is, do we have all three of those pieces right now? Ovdei Hashem, yeah. Living in Eretz Yisrael, many of us, you could ask the question whether it's an appropriate thing to say if I think we're still at 50% of Jews outside
Can you
Israel.
have a Seder where Jews in Israel say, now we live in Israel, and Jews in Chutz La'aretz don't?
I mean, we got only one Seder. I feel like we already have a pretty big difference in how we're doing Pesach. I think really one of the big questions is, to me, especially Pesach this year, is the shibud thing, right? Yeah, we're not avdei paro, right? But when we think about, let's say, the question of why we don't say Hallel on Purim, we say one of the reasons is akate avdei Achashverosh anan, right? We were still slaves to Achashverosh in a way after Purim. And I'm honestly thinking about this year and the number of people who are missing somebody at their Seder table this year, whether it's somebody who's serving in the army, someone who's been kidnapped, someone who's been killed. It feels like in some ways we're in a shibud situation. We're in a physical pain and difficulty situation. So maybe bigadol, we have our own government, but I don't know.
But does the halacha allow that? So last year you would have said it, and this year you wouldn't?
You're just asking the question at a hard time. I feel like maybe I would have been more optimistic in a different year, and this year it's not landing right for me.
I'll tell you, I assume that they picked, these are the psukim we said Bikurim. Everybody knew them by heart. I assume that when they changed the nusach, and they did change the nusach, right? They did stop saying, Va'aksho, now we live in Eretz Yisrael. We stopped saying that. but everybody knew was the next pasuk. It's like
they stopped bringing Bikurim. Like,
I know, but the sense is, it's like, I think it's like you said, let's stop here. And everybody goes, that's how it works. They knew it was there. And so everybody knows that the story of Mitzrayim ends in Eretz Yisrael. Everybody knows that, right? We arbitrarily end it because that's the focus on Leil Seder. Don't know. Look, there's a way around it, which I keep saying we're traditionalists, but we do this, right? During the meal, you could say the pasuk and drink a cup of wine.
If you feel like you're not drinking enough glasses of wine on Leil Haseder, we found a way to give you another one to represent that Vayivienu.
But I really don't know. Like, I think about Vayivienu, even though we don't say it. And again, we don't say it. I don't think Rav Lichtenstein said it. I don't want to change the minhag. But it's there, and people should think about it, and even people in America should think about it. I think I thought about it in America.
Maybe it's aspirational, meaning maybe we end it, meaning your suggestion is we end it because the story is Yetziat Mitzrayim, and we never get to Eretz Yisrael during Leil Haseder. But maybe the point was, we're cutting this out so you realize that if you're not there, right, the Jewish story is not complete until we're here. And so by cutting that off, I think maybe that's the answer to the question. We can't say it in Israel until everybody's here, because aspirationally, this is where our story ends. And until everyone's here, I don't think the story is done.
Okay, I agree. Yashkach.